Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on Himadri Speciality Chemical Ltd.
That's right. We've been looking closely at their FY25 results and, well, some pretty interesting strategic developments they've announced recently.
Yeah, we've gone through their reports, board meeting outcomes, the filings,
Mm.
trying to get the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. Give everyone a clear, engaging look at where Himadri stands now and where it looks like they're heading.
Exactly. It's about going beyond just the surface level numbers and trying to understand the story behind them, what it all means.
Okay, great. So let's dive right in. Their overall financial performance for FY25.
Mhm.
What really jumps out at you?
Well, the first thing that caught my eye was the big jump in sales volume. 16% increase. That pushed them over 552,000 metric tons.
16%. Wow. That's a significant volume.
It is. And that volume growth, it fed into a decent 10% rise in revenue, landing at about 4,596 crores. But what's really striking, I think, are the profitability improvements. Their EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, it surged by 33%.
33%, right.
And PAT profit after tax, that jumped even more, 36%. Plus, they managed to end up with a net positive cash balance of 371 crores. That really points to strong operations, good financial health.
That paints a pretty compelling picture for the full year FY25. And this isn't just a one-off good year, is it? I mean, the trend seems solid.
Oh, absolutely not a one-off. If you kind of zoom out and look at the last 5 years, say since FY21, their performance has been consistently impressive.
How so?
Well, think about this. They've had a 29% compound annual growth rate EBR in revenues over that period.
Okay, average yearly growth of 29%.
Yeah, and even better, a 60% CTR in EBITDA and an amazing 86% profit growth compounded annually. That's quite something. It really is. And on top of that, their ROCE, return on capital employed, basically how well they use their money to make money that's steadily climbed up to 34%, shows sustained efficiency.
Okay, so FY25 strong, fitting into a longer positive trend. But what about the most recent quarter, Q4 of FY25? Did that momentum carry through right to the end of the year?
That's a good question. Yeah, in Q4, they actually hit their highest ever quarterly EBITDA, 232 crores, which was up 31% compared to Q4 last year.
Record EBITDA in Q4. Nice.
And PAT was strong too, up 38% to 158 crores. But interestingly, their sales volumes dipped slightly in Q4, down about 3%.
Okay, volume's down a bit.
Yeah, and revenue was also down just a touch, about 4% compared to the same quarter the previous year.
So volumes and revenue slightly lower in the last quarter, but profitability still way up year on year. What do you think might be going on there?
Well, it could be a few things, right? Maybe they shifted their product mix towards, higher value specialty stuff that has better margins.
Makes sense.
Or maybe they just managed pricing really well in the market for what they were selling. The key thing, I think, is that even with that small volume diff, the profit numbers look really strong compared to last year. Suggests maybe better pricing power or a more profitable product mix.
Right, okay. That adds some important context.
Okay.
Let's shift gears a bit then. Let's talk about some of the strategic moves and acquisitions Himadri's been making. Seems like they've been pretty busy.
They certainly have.
Let's start with Elixir Carbo Private Limited. What was the thinking behind picking them up? Seems kind of small compared to Himadri overall.
Yeah, it does seem relatively small. The board approved buying 100% of Elixir Carbo back in April for, like you said, a modest 7.50 crores in cash.
And they make naphthalene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Manufacturing and trading naphthalene. Their turnover last year was about 11.40 crores. So size-wise, not huge. But the rationale seems to be about strengthening Himadri's core. Well, naphthalene is a key raw material for some types of carbon black, which Himadri already does a lot of. So this looks like a move to bolster their position in carbon materials and chemicals.
Ah, okay. So it's less about jumping into something totally new and more about maybe deepening their control or expertise in their existing playground.
Precisely. It feels like expanding their product range and maybe their market reach within naphthalene and things made from it. Sort of like vertical integration, potentially giving them cost savings or just more to offer existing customers.
Got it. Now, the other big one, Burla Tires Limited.
Yeah.
That feels like a much bigger deal, potentially taking them somewhere new entirely.
Oh, definitely. The Burla Tires acquisition finalized just around the end of FY25. That's a major diversification play.
Right.
They used internal cash and some debt. And this marks their first big step into the B2C business-to-consumer world. selling tires directly.
including fancy ones, like EV tires.
Yeah, they mentioned expanding into high-value niche products, and specifically EV specialized tires. They're aiming to get operations running pretty soon, maybe by June, so Q1 of FY26.
Wow. So moving from supplying chemicals to businesses to actually selling tires to people, that's a huge strategic pivot. What are the potential upsides you see?
Well, the obvious one is it gives them instant access to a much wider customer base, right? And Burla's existing distribution network gets them broader geographical reach.
Sure.
Plus, management is framing it as a turnaround opportunity, taking Burla tires, turning it around under their leadership, maybe hitting a higher value part of the tire market.
But it's also a risk, right? Entering a super competitive consumer market is very different from industrial chemicals.
Absolutely. It's a whole new ballgame. Different challenges, different competition, something to definitely keep an eye on.
Okay. And then there was the investment in Invati Creations. They took a stake last year. What's the story there?
Yeah, the Invati deal. This one feels very future-focused. Himadri bought a 40% stake for about 45 crores.
And Invati does battery stuff.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
Engineering lithium-ion battery electrode materials. But they also do R&D and nanotechnology and biosciences. Apparently, even looking at antiviral drugs. It's quite broad R&D. But the core alignment is clearly with Himadri's big push into lithium-ion battery-live materials. It fits right into that strategy. They even put two of their own people on Invati's board as directors.
Okay, right. So that Invati investment seems to directly feed into this major strategic thrust into the lithium-ion battery sector, which we keep hearing about from them.
Exactly. They are being very deliberate, very vocal about positioning themselves as a major player across the whole lithium-ion raw materials value chain.
And the ambition there seems huge.
It really is. Their vision is to build the first large commercial plant in India for LFP, lithium iron phosphate cathode active material. That's a key ingredient for a lot of EV batteries.
And the scale they're talking about.
Massive. Target production capacity of 200,000 metric tons per year, phased over 5-6 years, mind you. But the first phase alone, aiming for 40,000 tons, they expect that to be up and running by Q3 of FY27.
200,000 tons. That's a really significant scale, especially for LFP in India.
It's a huge commitment, and it shows they're serious about becoming a central part of the EV supply chain here.
And it sounds like they're looking beyond just making the LFP material itself.
Oh, yeah. Their ambitions are broader. They're doing R&D into actually extracting and processing lithium concentrate, trying to get more control over the raw materials.
Upstream integration.
Sort of. Plus, R&D into next-gen battery cathode materials, even using AI to help develop them. And importantly, they've also flagged their intention to get involved in lib recycling in India, creating that circular loop.
Okay, so it's really comprehensive strategy. Production, raw materials, next-gen tech, recycling. The whole package for the EV ecosystem.
Seems like it. It's a major bet on where transportation and energy storage are headed.
Definitely. Now, with all this expansion, these big, ambitious plans, what about the environmental side? Sustainability. Are they keeping up with that?
That's a crucial question. And yeah, it seems like they are putting more focus here. They got a buoy rating in their first CDP evaluation. That's the Carbon Disclosure Project for both climate change and water security in 2024.
A B rating first time out isn't bad. Shows they're engaging.
Right. It's a positive start for public disclosure, and they've set specific targets for this year, FY26, focused on cutting their Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, the direct ones from their plants, and using more recycled raw materials.
So near-term goals. Do they have a longer view on sustainability?
They do. What's notable is they've committed to a net zero roadmap, covering Scope 1, Scope 2, that's emissions from energy they buy, and even Scope 3, which is everything else in their value chain, suppliers, product use, etc.
That's ambitious too. Scope 3 is tough.
It is. They've set target dates, 2030, 2040, and 2050 for hitting net zero across the board. And they list specific initiatives: energy saving, waste heat recovery, water conservation, process improvements, looking at renewables.
Okay.
And they also plan to roll out a sustainable procurement framework, trying to influence their suppliers too.
Sounds pretty comprehensive, integrating it into how they operate. Okay, let's just quickly touch on some corporate governance bits and other things from recent announcements. Any key updates there?
Sure. The board recommended a final dividend on 206.0 per share for FY25. That needs shareholder approval, of course.
Standard practice. Any board changes?
Yes. They appointed a new independent director, Mr. Amitabh Shrivastava, for 5 years, pending shareholder approval again. His background looks interesting: over 37 years of materials management at Sale, plus board experience elsewhere.
Yeah, that kind of deep industry experience could be really valuable on the board.
Seems like it.
Any other governance appointments? Auditors?
Yep. M's LABH and LABH Associates, appointed as secretarial auditor for 5 years, FY26 to FY30, subject to approval. And Ernst& Young LLP, reappointed as internal auditors for FY26, just keeping the oversight functions in place.
Okay. And there was something about changing their articles of association. What was that about?
Yeah. That seems mostly like housekeeping, really. They removed some old clauses related to Bain Capital, who used to be a major investor but aren't anymore.
Right, cleaning up after divestment.
Exactly. And also updating things to reflect how some promoter entities are classified now, and just generally making sure the articles align with the latest SEBI rules and the Companies Act, just keeping the legal docs current.
Gotcha. And amidst all these big strategic shifts, are they still developing their core business, the specialty chemicals?
Absolutely. They haven't taken their eye off that ball. They recently launched 8 new specialty black series. It's carbon black, covering over 60 different grades.
60 grays, wow.
Yeah, tailored for specific uses. Some for color and purity, like Onex and Jtex. Others, like Energex, designed for conductivity, think batteries, coatings, polymers, and even special grades for specialty tires and EV tires.
So linking back to the Burla acquisition, potentially.
Could be some synergy there, yeah. And they're putting money behind it, too, planning to invest around 120 crores from internal cash to more than double their capacity for these high-value specialty carbon blacks.
Okay, so diversifying and strengthening the core. Sensible. Any quick updates on their subsidiaries?
Just briefly, they set up Himadri Speciality Inc. in the USA back in February, but it hasn't started operations yet. And of course, Brilla Tires Limited and some other entities officially became subsidiaries after FY25 closed, reflecting those acquisitions.
Right. Okay, so looking ahead, pulling all this together, what's your overall feeling about Himadri's outlook? Where are they headed?
Well, the management definitely sounds optimistic. They keep pointing to their strong financials, the strategic investments they've made, the R&D focus, and operational efficiency. They clearly feel they're in a good spot to grab growth opportunities, both in their traditional specialty chemical space and especially in this booming lib materials sector. The goal, they say, is long-term value for stakeholders.
And the key drivers they see?
The big ones they highlight are mobility, obviously, the tire business, and supplying EV materials and energy storage, which is the battery side again.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. If you had to boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into Himadri?
For me, number one is just the really strong FY25 financial performance. Good growth in volume, revenue, and especially profits.
Right. Solid foundation.
Second, the strategic acquisitions. Diversifying, yes, but purposefully deeper into naphthalene, into the B2C tire market, and crucially, doubling down on lib materials within body.
Okay.
Third, the sheer scale of their ambition in the EV ecosystem. That 200,000-ton LFP plan is a massive statement. It really stands out.
Yeah, that's definitely an aha moment.
And finally, I'd say their growing, tangible commitment to sustainability, the net zero roadmap, the specific targets. It seems genuine.
Yeah, that LFP number really sticks in my mind. And the Burla tires move.
Yeah.
Going direct to consumers is such a different direction. Okay, so considering all the solid core, the big lib bet, the move into tires, the sustainability push, here's a final thought to leave folks with. What do you think might be the single biggest catalyst, or maybe the biggest hurdle for Himadri over the next, say, 5 years? Is it pulling off that huge lib scale up, making the Burla tires turnaround work, or maybe something else entirely out there in the market?
That's a great question to ponder. It really could be any one of those, or maybe how they juggle all of them at once. Definitely encourages you to look deeper past our chat today, right? Consider the implications.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon, digging into another important story shaping the business landscape.